So we are going to, again, this section is dealing with graphing linear equations, but one of the things that we are going to focus on is how to take an equation that's in standard form and put it what's called function form, and in more details later when we get into slope-intercept form, it's actually called slope-intercept form. So basically standard form is when we have basically both the variables on both sides, where a, b, and c are numbers and x and y are the variables. So if the variables are on the same side and they equal a number, that is called standard form. Function form is when you solve for one of the variables. We are going to focus on solving for y because that would take it into a form called slope-intercept form, and again, more details on that later, but right now we're just focusing on how to take something from a standard form and putting it into slope-intercept form. So this would have been a standard form, and we solve for y by subtracting 2x from both sides, and we get it into slope-intercept form. There are 3 steps that we would do each time, and I'm going to type these in here so you can type these on your notes as well. So step 1 would be to add or subtract the x term for each side. So I'm going to put plus or subtract the x term from each side. So that's step 1. It's always going to be the same step from standard form into the next one. The next step, which would be step 2 we'll call, is to divide each term by the number with y. We call that the coefficient. If it's not 1, then you would have to do that step. Unless it's, a fraction, then we would multiply, but for the most part, you're going to divide each term by the number that is with y. In this case, y had a 1 with it, but in our sample problems, you can see down here, this has a -2 with it, so that would be that last step. All right, and we want to do it with each term, and I'll show you that as we go through these sample problems, and I'm going to add an extra problem on that. All right, and then there's step 3. Step 3 would be to simplify each fraction. Most of them are going to come out as whole numbers, but if they are a fraction, we leave them as a fraction, especially that term that is with the x, in this case that m, which again we're going to talk about in more details later. So here are the steps that we are going to follow for each of these. So let me go ahead and do 4 sample problems. This is only 3 listed here, but I'm going to add 1 more. So if we follow these directions, and again, standard form is where the x and the y equals a number. So 4x plus 1y equals 9. That's good. We just need to follow these steps. So add or subtract the x term. If the x term is a negative, we would add it. If it's a positive, we are going to subtract it. So here, I'm going to subtract 4x from each side. So when I do that, I rewrite it. I get y equals, and I'm going to write the x term first. I'm going to start you off there because I think it's important when we get into graphing lines, you're going to want to do that. So we're going to write the x term first, -4x, and then this 9 second. So we will write plus 9. And since this y is already a 1, we're done. There is no more, we don't have to do step 2 or step 3. And you'll see number 2 is exactly the same way as well. All right, so on number 2, we have the x term is a half x. So we can subtract a half x from each side. So I'm going to rewrite this as y equals, and then write this one first, -half x, and then write the plus 7 next. And that would be our final answer for that one as well. All right, so now this next one is going to do the second and third step, and I might break out the calculator for this one to show you guys that. So over here, again, we look at the x term. The x term is a -4x. We're going to add 4x to both sides. So this would leave us -2y. Remember that negative goes with the 2, equals, write that x term first, 4x plus 8. It's a positive 8, so I can leave it as a positive 8. So now my next step is to divide by the term, divide each term by the number with the y, so that would be the -2. And these fractions are going to simplify to whole numbers, so when I do -2 divided by -2, that just equals y, and then 4 divided by -2. So again, now we're going to just reduce these. -2 divided by -2 is 1, 4 divided by -2, that gives us -2, so I'm going to write -2x here. And then 8 divided by -2, let me just change that if we're using the decimals, gives us a -4. And that would be my final answer. All right, I'm going to add one more problem. I'm just going to make up one that's going to come out kind of nasty. So let's do 3x plus 5y equals, that's not going to be that bad, 17. All right, so in this case, we're going to do our 2 steps like before. So our first step is to subtract 3y from both sides, or 3x. So minus that 3x. So I can rewrite this as 5y equals, write that -3x first, plus 17. All right, my next step is now to divide by 5. So now I can rewrite this. 5 divided by 5 is y equals, and now you're going to reduce these fractions if you can. If not, we can leave them as fractions. So -3 divided by 5 means 0.6. It is just -3/5, so I'm going to leave that as -3 over 5x. Now I'm going to move the x just out here with it, because that fraction is there. And again, moving forward, you're going to want to do it that way or see it that way. 17 over 5 is going to just be 17 over 5. 17 divided by 5. So it's 3.4 or 17 over 5. So you can write it, the second one you can write as a decimal if you want, but really it's either one's fine. So plus, let's do it 3.4. I want you to get in the habit of leaving this term as a fraction, and there's a reason later why I want to do that. This one we can leave as 17 over 5, or we can change it to that decimal. So this would be fine, or if you left it as y equals -3 over 5x plus 17 over 5. So either or in this particular problem. So there's going to be an assignment that goes along with this. It's those 2 steps.